Hi, I'm Ian McCrowan, and welcome to my presentation on a life of artistic development. Upon looking at some of my earliest drawings, I was able to summarize them with the title Recording the World Around Me, as a lot of the initial renderings acted as a log or a recording device. The content was determined by my everyday surroundings, so my pencil became essentially my camera. Here are a few examples of some of my early elementary drawings. As you can see, I'm still using drawing as a form of communication essentially. While looking through some of these drawings, though, I couldn't help but notice some of the subtle signs of an innate interest in the arts, namely my attention to specific detail. Whether it was the Batmobile, the TV program on the television, the notes on the sheet music of the character playing piano, it was clear that I wanted to render things in a deliberate manner. Another early milestone in my artistic development was when I began building a style. I began drawing this character Billy, and you could see him repeated and rendered in various circumstances throughout this phase of my life. The influence of cartoons on me and how they became my own catalyst for creativity is clear. You can also see that I'm finding that interest point and moving beyond the realm of basic communication like, I saw this, here's what it looked like sort of drawings. Before moving into my preteen and teenage years, I wanted to note how important it is to have a space for exploration while evolving and developing as an artist. Meaning, it's important to keep a space for youth to explore interests without harsh judgment, and to provide constructive feedback on how to further navigate and develop such an interest, and to allow art environments to consider and support vulnerability, meaning art can be embarrassing, and that's okay. I bring this up as I discuss a few drawings that I found in a 7th grade English binder, mostly of the devil. I was in Catholic school at the time and not very happy about it. So the idea of the devil became this iconography for me to kind of express my distaste for the school I was in. And as much as I look back on some of these drawings and cringe a little bit and am a little embarrassed, I'm glad that I had a space to vent and to utilize the arts to sort of move forward from some of those feelings. Around this same point in my life, I discovered the imagery and music of punk rock, which brings me to my next point, the importance of infusing other art forms. It's important to find those entry points of interest, and to foster those interests and provide options on how to incorporate them into your visual realm, and to encourage the idea of combining art forms as a method of making new discoveries. Drawing from the influences of cartoons and punk music, I began to personalize my drawings in a way that they became my own. This would lead me to even designing my own punk flyers for shows of local bands and friends of mine. High school. I had left my Catholic school self behind, was beginning to expand my mind with new books and types of music amidst other things, but artistically was beginning to discover how my art didn't need to be so confrontational and could be more conversational. In essence, I was discovering my own drive. I was accepting the idea that I was obsessed with art, and I was ready to learn more about technique, and willing to accept constructive criticism. Some major influences in high school artistically were definitely the first time I saw a Robert Rauschenberg in real life, a book that a friend had given me on Dali, and realizing the fusion of art and the music world in discovering bands like the Velvet Underground. Here are a few examples of how the art began to reflect these interests. And some more. Certainly a lot of surrealism involved in some of these renderings. High school was also a breakthrough time where I actually started listening to my art teacher and deconstructing my own interests and discovering the importance of techniques. Outside of my surrealist doodlings, I was beginning to take more seriously the idea of drawing from life. By senior year of high school, I was already seeing significant growth, having taken technique seriously and infusing it with my own interests. Moving into my college years, my art and higher education seemed to go as follows. I began zeroing in on skill and technique so as to have a tool belt ready for more conceptual visions. I wanted to be a sponge. I wanted to absorb as much advice about the road ahead of me from professors and other artists. And I wanted to discover ways to financially survive this life as an artist. Early college began as a continuum from late high school, where I continued to sharpen up my skills of drawing from life. While continuing to sharpen up on some of my fundamental studio skills, I was also introduced to a lot of new artists in college. Some of my major artistic influences from college were the writings of Guy Debord, Marcel Duchamp and his approach to the ready-made, artist Jenny Saville and her gestural quality on the canvas, as well as street artist Swoon and her idea of the cutouts being included. I began incorporating these influences in various ways, in hopes to create my own style. College also allowed for the ability for new mediums and new techniques, including silk screening. I began using techniques like collage in my paintings, realizing that a painting doesn't have to be made with solely paint. Taking notes from street artists, I began using stencils to create repetitious patterns in some of my works. Once beyond college, I even became more comfortable with abstraction. The influence of Duchamp and the ready-mades allowed me to move beyond the idea of just using paint or pencil as a medium. I began to just find things around my basement and attic and create compositions with them. I began to also recognize that there's no hierarchy in medium, whether it was ceramics, pencil, paint, found objects. It's all acceptable for me to explore as an artist. This is one of my more recent paintings I've completed. It features my daughter, and I also see it as a good example of the evolution of my process, my inclusion of the various techniques that I've been able to absorb along the way. And finally, what I have learned through my own artistic development and how I plan to carry over these lessons into my teaching. Here were 4 points I'd like to note. Pay attention to those subtle signs of interest, that attention to detail, a specific style, or whatever indicators you may observe from your students. Make a space for exploration. Be mindful of judgment while providing constructive and encouraging feedback. Remember to support the vulnerability of artists. Encourage pre-existing interests. Foster the idea of combining art forms as a method of making new discoveries. And when students find that drive, push them in an encouraging and supportive way. Challenge them while rooting them on.